Righto everyone, the very first part of this video is in time-lapse. I do apologise to those people that don't like time-lapse videos, but all I'm doing is basically get my laminating schedule done, put my chop strand mat down and the mouldy bias on top of that. Some of you in different countries might call it 1708, but that's my structural glass on top. I do have to put another layer on top of that later on. There's another layer of 300 gram woven rovings that'll go down on top of that, gives me all my directions and the strength. And then we're going to try the rollers. So the very first one that I'm going to try here is the bristle roller. I've used all these before, but I wanted to try and slow it right down or try different tricks with these cameras to see if we could work out how the rollers work and see if we could see anything that really stood out that made one roller better than the other. But really didn't turn out that way. Ultimately, I think what I found was I just preferred one roller over all the rest, and it was because of the way it feels, it's the way it works, and the dexterity, the way it feels in your hand, and that is probably the bristle roller. But the bristle roller works its best when you're using lighter fabrics. So things like lighter chop strand mat, lighter glass, or your veils. But essentially, the intent of it is to pierce the fabric so that it allows any of the trapped air that's below it to escape, to come out, rise to the top, and just disappear into the atmosphere. But I really do like the bristle roller. It just feels good in my hands. It's just a really good roller. So this paddle roller here is right at the bottom of my list, and the reason for it is I just found that the paddle roller is a bit dirty. And what I mean by that is when you move that paddle roller around, it just flicks the resin up all over the place. Different people have different ideas and they use it differently, slower, faster, whatever. And it's just like any other tool that we use in a lot of the trades, is people have different preferences for different tools. And this paddle roller is definitely not my favourite roller. It throws the resin up everywhere, as you can see there. Have a look at the glass, or not so much the glass, but the resin moving around there. And it leaves little hills and crevices after you've been through. It does settle itself out, almost like it's self-leveling. The resin is self-leveling or something, but it just it didn't feel right to me. It just something about it I just didn't like. But just rolling it backwards and forwards there, try and make sure that I get. Oh, there you go. Have a look at that. See all the little crevices and everything that I was talking about? See the ridges? So it did level out, but it was, it just made me feel like, I'm not a fan of it. And then I think, so at the top of my list is the bristle roller, then the radius roller, and right at the bottom there is that paddle roller. So the radius roller there, this one works really well. This one's quite heavy in the sense that you don't have to put a lot of pressure on it to get it to work. What I did there too before is just dip that into a bit of resin. When I look at the laminate, if I see any glass below that looks like it might not be wet out thoroughly, I'll always dip the roller into a bit of resin and try and force it down in between those sheets of glass to make sure it's saturated all the way through. It shouldn't really happen because we wet it out. Each subsequent layer, I basically wet it out first, put my first layer down, roller it out just to make sure it's fully saturated, and then roll some more resin on it, and then put my next layer on, and so on all the way through. So that there, you can see that the finish there is quite smooth. It's quite neat. You can see little bubbles sort of appearing after it, but they disappear rather quickly. And essentially I felt like that roller worked very, very well for what I was trying to do. So this again is the bristle roller. She's a bit dirty there now at the moment, but you can see how when I move that roller through, there's no real indentations, there's nothing left behind. Maybe a little bit of glass that pops up here and there, but typically it's very neat, very tidy, smooths it off quite well, gets rid of any of the bigger air pockets, and just works well. You can move the resin around as well by adding a little bit more pressure to it and getting it to move. You'll see shortly where I actually find some very tiny little air bubbles. They're like 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter, and I've basically got to get them out, and to do that I have to push them out. So we keep going here, keep working. I'll probably overwork this a little bit, and by overworking it you can create problems in itself and create air bubbles. So as I understand it, look, I'm no chemist, but air bubbles can be caused through a few different things, and one of the things can be the chemical structure of the resin and the MEKP that you're using. It can aerate it a little bit too much and form bubbles. The other one is overworking it and just constantly going and going and going, and it can basically lift tiny little sections of the glass and air gets trapped underneath it. And the same sort of thing, if you're overworking it and the resin gets a bit tacky, then what happens is when you start to push that roller down or put that roller onto the glass, the glass sticks to the roller and it wants to lift, and by lifting it up it's pushing air down underneath it, and that air gets trapped in there, creating some pretty big problems. So then what I normally do is, if I have that problem, I'll dip that roller into some resin and work it again. That wet roller just works out a little bit better, and it makes sure that the glass doesn't stick to it. So here I'm looking at tiny little air bubbles, like I said before. They're like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters in diameter. They're tiny, very, very, very small. It was lucky that I looked very, very closely. I wouldn't have seen them when I was standing up normally having a look. So I've crouched down over the top of it and I'm having a look, and I can see them. And that's the only way I can see them. They're that small. So what I'm about to do is get that roller again and push those air bubbles out. Push them all together. See, they're all grouped up, and push them all together. And then what I'll do is essentially push the roller in one direction only. I won't go backwards and forwards too much, because that again can lift the glass, but I just push it out. So there we go, just pushing it out in one direction. It's a fair bit of air there, eh? That's a fair bit of air. It's a good thing I saw that. Very, very pleased that I saw that. And push it out, and then you can see, there you go, another lot. So it's working quite well there. It's working well to push that air out, to accumulate all of those little bubbles into the one section there, and just push it, get it out to the edge. So that's slow motion there. The whole idea, the reason I thought I'd do it in slow motion, is to see if we can sort of see what's happening, how the roller's doing its job. But realistically, I don't know if there was really any advantage to it. Maybe some people that have got better eyesight than I have can see what it's doing a little bit better. But the other thing maybe you can have a look at, like as the roller goes down, there's nowhere near as much resin flicking up as what was with that paddle roller, and the finish is quite smooth. Apart from the texture of the glass, or the print through of the glass that's underneath it, it's actually quite smooth. It does start to create some crevices, but it just levels itself out, and it's quite nice. So that's one of the reasons that I like that bristle roller and the radius roller so much, is the finish that it gives is quite good, and it does what it's supposed to do. There you go again, pushing some air out, and pointing at it there. So it pushes the air out, accumulates that air, and it gets it into a position where I can just push it out really easily. So again, just pushing it in one direction, not going backwards and forwards too much, pushing it out, going backwards and forwards there, but pushing it out just to get it to that edge. And that's what I need to do, is just get it all out. Alright, I think we're just about done. I think I must be pretty close to getting this absolutely spot on. When I sat back and had a look at this and had a really close look, I couldn't see any more air bubbles, none of the tiny little ones, obviously no big ones. Obviously working that glass or the resin right to the very edge of that bulkhead to make sure that that glass is stuck firmly to the edge. Alright, so that's just about it, guys. So essentially my favourite would be the bristle roller, depending on the material that I'm using. The thing is about a bristle roller too is if you're using some of the stitched fabrics, what can happen is the bristles can catch on some of that stitching and it starts to lift it and makes a mess, makes an absolute mess. But just got to be mindful that if that happens, then again wet out that roller and push it all back down. But and then I'll grab the radius roller. Sometimes I'll have one roller on each hand so that I can use one to just keep going, change, chop and change and move them around. So there you go. Look, I hope you found that a little bit interesting anyway. I hope it helps with your decisions about which roller you might use. You might go and buy all three too as well and give them a crack, have a go, see which one you like. And don't forget, the same, like, different people like different things. Different people like to use different tools. So you might like the paddle roller, you might like the radius roller, I don't know, but the only way to find out is to give it a go, have a crack at it, and work out which one you prefer. This guy here is my fave by a long way, especially with those lighter glasses or the lighter laminates. I probably won't use it anywhere near as much for the stitch stuff, but it works well. Well, thanks guys, thanks for checking this out, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.